I think we are looking at 11:31 right now, so we'll go ahead and move forward. Again, please join me in welcoming Chandra Vasser. She was appointed to Vice President of Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Nissan Americas in November of 2021. In this role, Vasser is responsible for leading efforts to develop a culture where all employees can be productive, respected, and feel safe in their work environments. Vasser drives Nissan's diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies while developing partnerships and plans to share the company's DEI commitments with employees, customers, and the community. Chandra began her career with Nissan in 2004 and has since served in a wide range of leadership roles. Most recently, she was Director of Finance, overseeing activities in marketing, sales, after sales, sales audits, and cost of quality areas. Prior to that, Vasser served in multiple Director of Finance roles, leading activities for NMAC, remarketing, purchasing, services, and support administration, which included leadership of supplier diversity. A certified public accountant, Vasser holds a Bachelor of Business Administration degree in accounting from Tennessee State University and a Master's of Business Administration degree from Vanderbilt University's Owen Graduate School of Management. Additionally, she has completed the Fusion Leadership Development Circuit for Women and McKinsey Academy's Black Executive Leadership Program. Again, please join me in welcoming Mrs. Chandra Vasser.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for allowing me to be here. Thank you to Deborah Lake and to Brandy Gray for all of your support. I am going to pull up my presentation here. Just give me a second. Okay, does that look good to everyone? You can see presentation mode? Okay.
It is.
So again, good morning and thank you all for joining and being a part of this discussion today. Again, I'm Chandra Vasser and really excited to talk to you about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So today I'm going to highlight or focus on some of the best practices in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about best practices and then share what Nissan is doing in that space. I wanted to keep it as high level as possible in order to just focus on those types of initiatives that can resonate in any industry. So hopefully this will be a good, engaging conversation for you. I'm also going to do some Menti polls throughout, so please have your cell phones ready to jump in and participate. I also want to say that I love to have a more engaging discussion. So if there are questions throughout, I am happy to take those throughout the presentation. Certainly, we don't want to wait till the end. If someone has a burning question, let's get it out there and get it answered. So as we know that, the past few years have been a very interesting time in the DEI space. We know with a lot of the events, the social unrest that occurred in our country in the United States in 2020, we saw a lot of companies come forward with commitments on how they would address some of the inequities that existed within the system. And so there has been a lot of transition as companies made those commitments. Some kept those commitments, some did not. Some are still working towards those commitments, but we also see that maybe those commitments are starting to wane. And a lot of the reasons that you see that sort of activity is because there isn't really a focus on sustaining your DEI initiatives. So there really has to be a focus on best practices, implementing those best practices, and really understanding your specific organization, where your organization sits on a DEI continuum, understanding what your organization is prepared for and ready to address, And then making sure you have all the commitments in place to continue driving your DEI initiatives forward. So I'm going to jump first to a Menti poll. Here is the QR code. So if you want to please go ahead and click on that, but I'm also going to switch my screen here. So give me a second. Okay, so do you see the Menti poll?
Yes.
Okay, hopefully this works. This is my first time doing this. And I hopefully I didn't move too fast before people could get their phones out. Let me know if I did, if I moved too fast, because I can go back if I need to. So I'm waiting for responses, so I don't know if I moved too fast.
Yeah, you may want to bring it back up just for a second, Chandra. I know
Okay.
I'm in the process of typing my response.
Oh, okay, perfect. Let me bring up the okay. Did everybody have a chance to click that link? Okay, I'm gonna jump back over and see how we're doing with that poll. Oh, yes, awesome. So we're seeing some answers come through here. Okay, so far we have best practices to establish buy-in and prevent burnout, overall perspective and how to create a dynamic, inclusive environment for all employees, things to be aware of when starting a DEI program, update, small business with no formal DEI program yet. I'm looking for what others do in that space and how to follow through. Okay. So I think we have some good responses here. So let's dive into the presentation. Oh, wait a minute. Did I do that wrong? Share. Okay. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Okay, so before you can even think about best practices and you know, how you want to move forward with your DEI initiatives, the first thing you need to do is define diversity, equity, and inclusion for your organization. And for some of you out there, you may also want to think about belonging, since that's a critical aspect of this as well. You know, for us here at Nissan, historically, and I think not just at Nissan, in general, historically, diversity has been labeled as something that is only for people who are not part of the majority. So it has been equated with minority. So if you are a minority, you are diverse, right? But the reality is diversity includes everyone, and it really represents the full spectrum of human differences and the variety of ideas within an organization. One thing that I really like to reinforce to everyone is that diversity is inclusionary. It is not exclusionary. It does not exclude people who are from the majority. It does not exclude white men. Diversity is intended to cover everyone. Now, a newer concept within the DEI terminology is equity. So there's always a conversation about equality, right? And the reason these types of programs exist is to reach an outcome of equality. But equality is really the ultimate outcome. You can't achieve equality if you don't really understand equity and if you're not focused on equity. So with equity, what you're doing is you are assessing the individual needs of people in your organization so that you can provide your employees or your customers or whoever your stakeholder is the resources or accommodations that they need in order to achieve a fair outcome for all. And then finally, inclusion. So diversity is very important, right? It's very easy. Well, I say very easy. It could be a challenge depending on your industry, but generally, finding diverse talent is not necessarily difficult. Finding diverse customers is not necessarily difficult. But how do you make all of the individuals in your organization or all of your customers or stakeholders feel that they are part of your organization? And the way you do that is through inclusion. And inclusion basically leverages the diversity in order to allow each person to feel valued so that they are able to contribute to their full potential in achieving the mission of the organization. So at a high level, that is how we at Nissan define diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are many ways that you can define this for your organization. But in order to get buy-in, I really encourage people to think about these terms as terms that should be encompassing everyone, not just focusing on your underrepresented groups. So we have another Mentimeter. So let me switch us out again, because what I want us to answer now is, let's talk about why these concepts are so important. And it really comes down to the fact that there are benefits to addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I really want everyone to jump on this Mentimeter and provide an answer to the question: when organizations act on DEI, they experience 1, A, larger revenue growth, B, a better employee experience, C, higher retention, or D, all of the above. Okay. Can everyone say, oh yes, I see some answers coming in, or at least one answer. And so great. I see so far that we have about 5 answers so far. And the majority of people who are answering are saying all of the above. And so I am going to show you that the correct answer to this is definitely all of the above. So certainly when organizations focus on DEI, they have the opportunity to have higher revenue growth. And that speaks to bringing in more customers from different backgrounds to enjoy their products and services. Certainly there's a better employee experience. as employees feel that there is an intentional focus on those employees being included and having their voices heard as part of driving solutions for the organization. And also it helps because those organizations and those employees have higher innovation and then certainly higher retention, right? We are certainly seeing a movement to where there is a belief that by focusing on DEI as part of an organization's corporate strategy, there is higher retention of those employees. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into the presentation here. Okay, so I want to start by diving into the best practices, right? So now that you understand what the terminology means, we have to think about best practices as a way to sustain our DEI efforts. So the first thing I want to talk about is support from the top. So it is absolutely critical to have that leadership commitment, that support from the highest levels in the organization in order for DEI to sustain, in order for you to get the buy-in that you need across an organization. And I want to do another Mentimeter where I want you guys to provide your thoughts on, leadership. So there's 3 questions here. Or 3 comments, 3 statements. The first is the proportion of employees who do not feel included is 10 times higher than leaders believe. The next one is 68% of leaders feel they create empowering environments where employees can be themselves, raise concerns, and innovate without fear of failure. And 36% of employees feel leaders create empowering environments where employees can be themselves, raise concerns, and innovate without fear of failure. Skip that question. Here we go. Leadership. Okay. So jump right in and provide your, whether you strongly disagree with these statements or whether you strongly agree with these statements. And you can go anywhere on the continuum. Okay, great. So I see some answers coming in. Keep those answers coming. But all of these statements are 100% true. The proportion of employees who do not feel included is 10 times higher than leaders believe. So leaders truly believe they are creating these safe spaces for employees. But the reality is employees don't necessarily agree. And many of the employees are feeling like more needs to be done to create that space for them to feel comfortable coming forward with their most innovative and productive ideas. So let's jump back into the presentation here. And so one thing that, I want to share with you about leadership commitment is, that senior leaders can positively influence other leaders by showing their commitment to DEI. And so a BCG report from 2023 basically revealed that 83% of employees report that their direct managers are also committed to DEI. And 86% of employees reported that their direct managers create a feeling of psychological safety when their senior-most leaders show support for DEI. And so here at Nissan, I wanted to share with you, this is our chairperson, who is basically, this is who I report to. He is our equivalent of our CEO for our Americas region, which covers the US, Canada, Mexico, and Brazil. And basically his belief is that, you know, some things require major change and a close examination of current practices and mindsets. Nissan Motor Corporation continues our journey to break through the convention of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We still have a lot of work to do as a company and as a society, but Nissan is committed to doing our part to create positive and effective change. And the key here is, he says, I am personally as well, right? So you really need the senior most leaders to be personally committed, and you need them to be truly invested from a business standpoint in the concepts of DEI. If you don't have that commitment from the very top of your organization, it's very easy for people to disconnect and decide that this is not something that they want to or need to engage in. And so it's very critical to have that support from the very top. So the next two best practices I want to talk about are the reporting relationship between a chief DEI officer or and the resources required to be successful in this space. So we have seen a huge shift since 2020, where previously DEI and DEI officers generally reported into HR. And I think that still is what you would see in most cases. But the key is to understand that DEI is not just an HR initiative. It is a full cultural transformation. And so it requires you to really think long and hard about the reporting relationship. DEI has to be a strategic imperative. It impacts all aspects of a business. It's not just about bringing in diverse talent. That is critical, but it's about ensuring that you have diversity at every stage of the talent life cycle. It's about understanding, are you communicating to your customers who represent many different walks of life? It's about your marketing efforts. It's about your external and internal communications efforts. What are you doing? You know, for I work for an automotive company. We have a dealer body that is the place where people go to buy their cars. What sort of messaging are they get when they go to dealers to buy a car? So it's really has to be embedded in all aspects of your business. And if that's the case, how do you ensure that the chief DEI officer has a voice and that there is a message sent to your organization that this is a strategic imperative? And the other thing I want to talk about are the resources, right? It's people, it's time, it's money, it's budget. Do you have a proper allocation of resources to ensure that you are able to move within this DEI space? So just a little bit about Nissan. When we created my position in 2021, we said, what are the best practices for a chief DEI officer? And so we basically said, our chief DEI officer needs to report to the chairperson, because the chairperson is the equivalent of the CEO of our region, and he oversees everything. And so he needs to be working hand in hand with that chief DEI officer to make sure that DEI is understood by all of his leaders and that it is being embedded throughout the business. And so we made that position a C-suite level position, whereas previously it was not a C-suite level position with a direct reporting relationship to the chairperson. There were some other things that we considered as well, but for the purposes of this part of the presentation, it was really important that we had a dedicated team. Previously, we probably had one, maybe two people in our DEI organization. It was embedded in HR, so everything was about HR and external relationships. By moving it out of HR, putting it directly under the chairperson, we said, hey, this is much broader than an HR initiative, so we have to have resources to ensure that we are driving change across the organization. And so now our team is about 16 or 17 people. It covers our full region, US, Canada, Mexico, and South America. And it covers, everything from an HR standpoint point, culture, talent, reporting, and analytics, supplier diversity, philanthropy, marketing, communications, dealer diversity, and then our external marketing and advertising. It covers a lot of external partners that are in many spaces across the organization. It covers our employee resource groups as well as training. So the next best practice that is really important is to develop a strategy. And that strategy, that DEI strategy, must align with your corporate strategy. If there is not an alignment with the mission and values and the vision of your corporation, then you are not going to be successful in this space. So I'm going to skip these two mentees and jump into a bit more about strategy. So as I mentioned, it has to align with the corporate strategy. In addition, you need buy-in from leaders across the organization. So how do you gain that sort of buy-in to your strategy? You really need to start with an internal gap assessment. So talk to your employees. That is the most important feedback. Do focus groups. Do engagement surveys. There are some groups of employees who will talk to you and who are open and will share all their ideas, and there are others who don't want to share openly. So provide a forum for them to provide feedback that is confidential if necessary. You really need to identify a DEI champion, and that DEI champion has to be someone with influence in the organization. They need to be one of your senior most leaders who truly buys in to the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then when you start to think about who can be part of a team to help you define that strategy, you want to think about who's passionate about DEI. But I always say that passion does not drive action within the DEI space. You need people who are knowledgeable. You need people who are from cross-functional and diverse employee groups. And you need people who are going to approach this and think about it holistically. I can't think about DEI just from my own lived experience. My lived experience is important and brings value, but I also have to be open to understanding that there are other lived experiences that also need to be considered when thinking about a DEI strategy. You really need to understand the external factors. What is going on politically? What is the economic situation? What are legal ramifications and regulations? And what are social factors and demographics that need to be thought of? And then when you're thinking about that strategy, what is your purpose? Why is DEI important to your organization? And that purpose, as I mentioned earlier, needs to reflect the mission, the vision, and the values of your organization. And then finally, it has to include strategic pillars and customized actions and initiatives. If your strategy is just a communication strategy with no action, you're just talking about it, you just have a bunch of leaders saying, hey, this is what I think about DEI, it's so great, but there are no actions that are driving change in your organization, you will quickly lose people. So just a key point here, organizations with a DEI strategy versus those with no DEI strategy, according to McLean & Company, are 1.4 times more likely to report high overall organization performance, 1.8 times more likely to be high performing at social and environmental sustainability, and 2.4 times more likely to be high performing at DEI. So now I want to talk a little bit about Nissan's DEI strategy. So we've had a DEI organization for over 10 years, right? But again, like as I mentioned, that organization was embedded in HR. And after the murder of George Floyd, we realized that we needed to really show that we were much more serious about DEI. And so we created my position, and then we created our overarching DEI strategy. But our strategy started with our North Star. So what is that guiding principle? What is that purpose? What is it that will drive people to understand and to engage around DEI? And so our North Star in Nissan is better conversations lead to better actions. Notice that word action. We're basically saying, we know this is a tough space. We know that we have a lot of diversity in our employee ranks and within our customer base. How do we have those tough conversations, learn from those conversations, and then take what we learn and create actions that will drive meaningful change. The next step was that we created our DEI philosophy, Nissan for everyone. We believe that when everyone belongs, the power of Nissan is undeniable. And so we created this philosophy, which is based on 5 principles: transparency, courage, vulnerability, equity, and inclusivity. So it's important. This is our purpose. These are traits that we want everyone to think about, and as the why behind what we're doing from a DEI perspective. So I talked a little bit about those principles of courage, transparency, equity, vulnerability, and inclusivity. The next step of our strategy is that we have strategic pillars. So our 3 strategic pillars as it relates to DEI are people, our culture, and our partners. From a people standpoint, we want to unlock every employee's potential to do the best work of their life. From a culture standpoint, we want to build a safe space where curiosity and openness drive innovation. And then from a partner standpoint, we want to create avenues of opportunity in our industry for our employees, our customers, our dealers, our suppliers, and the communities where our employees and customers live and work. And as I kind of mentioned before, we shifted from DEI being about HR initiatives to being an integrated strategy that covers our culture, our talent, in every function within our organization. It covers philanthropy, how we're supporting those communities where we live and work. Our suppliers, what are we doing to diversify our supply base and make sure that small businesses have an opportunity to do work with Nissan? Marketing, what is our marketing message? How do we drive different customers into our brand? What about our dealerships? When people go to a dealership to buy a car, do they have a great experience? Do they feel that that dealer understands their situation, understands them? Are there dealerships that represent the people who are buying our cars? What about communications? How are we communicating internally and externally our point of view as it relates to diversity? And then all of our external partners, whether it's our community nonprofit partners, whether it's suppliers or dealers, how are we engaging those partners around our vision of DEI? So the next step of what you need to think about from a best practice standpoint is governance. Governance is necessary in order to ensure everyone understands their level of accountability for owning, delivering, approving DEI, and that is how you ensure that it's sustainable. So from a governance standpoint, a governance model defines the accountability within the organization. It provides a clear governance framework, outlines the roles and responsibility of both individuals as well as functions. And then it clearly communicates, a clearly communicated governance model ensures that the DEI strategy is successful and that it's sustainable. And so some of your key purposes of governance are: 1, to set the DEI strategy. Number 2, create the DEI initiatives. Number 3, implement those initiatives. And number 4, advise on that DEI strategy and initiatives. Those are all aspects of what makes a strong governance model that should be included in that governance model, and it should clearly define the who and how that communication should work amongst all of those people that are embedded within these key purposes. So let me talk a little bit about Nissan's governance model. So what you see here is we have communication throughout all levels. So from the highest level, which is our executive DEI council, all the way to the to our every employee, even an employee that is on the shop floor producing our cars. So our executive DEI council is really the decision-making body. It is led by our chairperson. That body creates the DEI strategy, ensuring alignment with business objectives. That group also drives the accountability for achieving our diversity goals. They are responsible for communicating goals and progress, measuring success, and they always have to be inclusion champions. We need them to be the cheerleaders of inclusion. Next, we have an advisory DEI council, which is led by myself, the chief DEI officer. It is made up of executives that report into those executives that sit on the executive DEI council. So it is the next layer, next two levels of executive leadership at Nissan. They are responsible for helping to drive our DEI actions within their functions. They are responsible for helping us to implement the strategy, and they are the voice for advising our executive council on the diversity needs of the organization. And again, they have to be inclusion champions. They are cheerleaders of inclusion. Then we have our functional leadership that supports the members of that advisory council. They are responsible for supporting implementation. Their job is to raise issues to the advisory council. And again, they are inclusion champions. And then our employees, whether they are members of our employee resource groups, which we call business synergy teams, or they are employees who don't have time for business synergy teams, but they need to be included. They have a role to play in our governance model, as well as they have the ability to raise topics and issues to our functional leadership, or through the business synergy teams, or directly to my organization. But again, we need everyone to be an inclusion champion. So the next step or best practice that I would highlight is a readiness assessment. It's really important for people to understand that DEI is it's not something that you're going to solve immediately. It is a journey, and there is a continuum. So there are many organizations out there that have readiness assessments. This is an example of one from Deloitte. There's also a really good one from Korn Ferry and many other organizations out there. But the first piece of this is understanding whether it's a function, whether it's your employees individually, what is their persona as it relates to DEI? Are they completely opposed to it, or are they completely committed to it? Or are they somewhere in between? Whether they are kind of unaware, not really sure about it, whether they're like, I'm not really sure, this is very anxious, I don't really understand this stuff because I haven't really heard much about it. Or are they fatigued? Are they people who were so pumped up about the fact that you were talking about starting a DEI committee or organization, and there's no progress, so I'm over it, I'm fatigued? Or are they really supportive? Are they people who are saying, I'm in favor, but it's not really my job to do it, right? So you really have to understand where people sit as it relates to their persona about DEI. And then on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see that there's this continuum, and the continuums are, depending on which organization you go to, they're all similar. But that continuum starts anywhere from compliance, which is really about, are we adhering to affirmative action goals, or, is it more just about legal requirements? We're doing this because we're trying to manage legal issues, all the way up to level 4, which is, it's really integrated throughout your entire organization, throughout every aspect of your business, right? And it takes time to move on this continuum, right? And so as you're thinking about a level 2, this is where maybe you're focused on increasing representations of specific demographic groups, right? So maybe you're only focused on women and people of, certain ethnicities. And then at level 3, it's about being more leader-led. So how are your business leaders leading these initiatives within their functions, right? And so this is where maybe you're looking at more than just those visible characteristics of diversity to all employees, and understanding systemic barriers that all employees face, and trying to understand the makeup of your employee population. What are the different cultural diversity moments that you have within your organization, beyond just what you see, right? What about people with disabilities? What about your LGBTQ plus community? Taking it to that level 3 is where you start to think about more than just those visible characteristics, and really start to think about who the leaders and the various functions are and how they're embracing DEI. So I think it's really important to understand where your organization is in order to really understand where you need to start and how you need to move forward, and to understand that it's not realistic to go from level 1 to level 4. If you're at level 1, what steps can you take to progress to level 2? And what steps can you then take to progress to level 3? Understanding this is a journey, it takes time, there's a continuum. So I'm going to skip that mentee as well and jump into the next best practice, which I talked about at the beginning. Your DEI strategy has to have action. It cannot just be a communications plan. What are the actions, the measurable actions that people see and feel as part of an organization? So just, actions, again, that's what drives your DEI strategy. They should align with your specific DEI challenges and goals as an organization. You have to understand what are the resources that you need to take an action all the way through to implementation. And then who's accountable for that action? A lot of times people think that once you start a DEI organization, that the DEI team is responsible for executing everything, but that's not the reality. Your DEI team should be very engaged with creating that strategy and ideating with people within the organization, but really understand who owns it, where the responsibility lies, so that you have all the right parties engaged to drive that sustainability. And then you need to define how your actions will be measured, because you need to measure to make sure that you are staying abreast of what needs to change. Here are just a few high-level examples of initiatives. It could be starting employee resource groups. It could be looking at your interview process and making sure you have diverse interview panels and diverse slates. It could be a sponsorship or mentorship program. It could be a multicultural marketing campaign that's marketing to a Hispanic community or an African-American community. It could be a supplier diversity initiative. It could be training on DEI competencies. It could be an assessment of your benefits. There are many different actions that you can take depending on where you are today. And then this is just Nissan. You can see here at the very top where we have our North Star and those principles and our pillars that I mentioned. And then you can see we have our actions and how we are going to measure those actions. And then the final step is the communications plan. And it's important to make sure you have timely communication to both internal and external stakeholders, right? So the communications plan is key for creating the understanding and buy-in. It should be tailored to the audience, whether it's a function, you may communicate differently to your manufacturing function versus your finance function. What level are the employees? How do you communicate based on employee level, their leadership type, whether it's an external partner, whether it's internal. And then you want to make sure that you are choosing the communications channels, whether it's through social media, town halls, emails, online, etc. And who do you communicate through? My recommendation is that you have a process of communicating through your CEO, as well as your chief DEI officer and any of your executive DEI champions. You want to communicate before you implement. If you communicate before you implement, it really helps you to reduce resistance and to get that buy-in, because you can also address any issues that could come up head them off before they come up. Create those feedback loops, ones that are direct, as well as those that could be confidential. And then make sure your message is consistent and be open and honest. You definitely want to be very transparent in how you communicate DEI. And what you want to communicate is the purpose of DEI and the why. What is your business case for diversity? Or do you have a fairness case for diversity, or do you have both? My recommendation is that you have both, because that business case for diversity resonates with some, and the fairness case resonates with others. There are some people who say, don't talk to me about diversity because you think that you're going to make another dollar, right? It's the right thing to do. So make sure you consider both aspects of the types of cases when you're thinking about DEI. And then, as I said earlier, define DEI to your organization. Highlight how it will contribute to innovation and success for your organization. Make sure you are presenting the impact of DEI on your community, on your customers, on your employees, and on your external partners. And then communicate that DEI strategy, the pillars, and the actions. And so here I'm just summarizing at a high level those best practices that I just walked through. Support from the top. Consider who that position reports to. Make sure there's dedicated resources. Develop a strategy that aligns with your corporate strategy and has strategic pillars as well as actions. Create your governance model to understand who's accountable and make sure it's sustainable. Understand the readiness of your organization. Where are they on the DEI continuum? Create those measurable actions and then figure out how you're going to communicate it to all of your stakeholders in a timely, open, and honest manner. And so I have one last mentee, but I am also open to answering any questions. And I'm going to pull up that mentee so you guys can name one word to describe how you feel about diversity, equity, and inclusion after hearing some of these best practices. I'm sharing the wrong thing. Okay, so I have that pulled up and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Hi, Chandra, it's Deborah. I see that someone shared one of the words that I was about to type in, and that's inspired. I do have a comment more so than a question from your opening presentation. One nugget that you shared that I felt was so pivotal and important is for everyone to understand that diversity is not exclusionary. It does not exclude anyone, and it's not just for individuals who have been excluded or marginalized. It truly is for everyone.
Yes, it is so important to shift the narrative in organizations because there's a lot of fear that people feel like, oh, I'm losing something, right? Now you're all of a sudden focused on everybody that's from, different underrepresented groups. Well, what about me, right? And then some of those groups are feeling like, yeah, well, you only focus on gender or you're just focused on ethnicity. Well, what about me, right? So it's really important for you to change the narratives within your organization and make sure that when you talk about these topics, they are covering everyone, that you are considering the different walks of life, right? So here at Nissan, we are really shifting our focus to make sure that we are changing that narrative. And we're asking people to stop saying you're either diverse or non-diverse. Everyone's diverse, right? That is a characteristic that describes everyone. And we need to understand everyone's situation as much as possible and make sure that we are bringing about internal initiatives, benefits, strategies around talent promotion that benefit everyone. And so that is really the key, and one way that you really get buy-in around these initiatives. But it's also important, you got to understand the demographic makeup within your organization.
No, I totally agree. And if any of the attendees would like to come off mute to ask Chandra your question, you may. If you're a little bashful and shy, you can also drop your question into the chat and we'll relay that over to Chandra. All right, and if we don't have any questions or additional comments, just want to remind everyone on the call, our attendees, that you have earned 1 credit hour for your attendance on today, whether you currently have the SHRM CP or SCP or the HRCI, and we will be contacting you in that regard to assure that everyone who attended today does receive proper credit for that. All right. Next slide, Brandy. And also we have some upcoming events. On March 29th, we do have an on-site session asking the right questions, leveraging a question in, insight out methodology to deliver actionable insights. And this is an MTSU breakfast series. It's on March 29th from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And this will be at the MTSU Foundation House. So just something to keep in mind. And if you do have interest in attending, you can register on the MT SHRM website at mtshrm.org. And also, if you would like to share your expertise with the broader community through SHRM, we do encourage you to reach out to MT SHRM. You can also email me directly, dlake615@outlook.com, whether you have interest in volunteering for the Diversity and Inclusion Committee that I lead, or any of the others that we have with SHRM, and we'll go through those lists of options as well. And of course, you can follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook. Just look for MT SHRM. Okay, next slide. Okay. And just a reminder, we do offer through SHRM career transition meetings. And if you're currently open or looking for a new role and need a little assistance, whether it be your resume or just through some networking, please do check the MT SHRM website for our calendar. We do have 2 of those sessions coming up on April 1st and 15th from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. And those are virtually online. Again, you can see our MT SHRM website, go to the calendar, and it'll list this. It's available through your membership. Okay. And here is a glance at our MT SHRM board members here. This is also available on the MT SHRM website. You can see those who lead our different committees and departments within the MT SHRM organization. Righty, next slide. Okay. And if you'd like to get involved in a committee, we love volunteers at MT SHRM. So if you would like to serve on any one of these committees, please just contact us through the MT SHRM website, send your interests and your email, and those of us who lead one of the committees will definitely reach out for you. Generally, it involves a monthly commitment of maybe an hour through committee meetings. So we do hope that some of you who are on the call would like to join one of the committees or share with friends who might be interested. The next slide. Okay. Some wonderful accolades about SHRM and MT SHRM. Next slide. And of course, thank you so much for attending the Diversity and Inclusion Committee webinar on today. And if you have interest in joining MT SHRM's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, please do contact me, Deborah Lake. I'm the director for the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. There's my email address, dlake615@outlook.com. if you have interest in joining our committee. We do meet monthly, once a month, about an hour meeting. We have plenty of room for volunteers for you to serve, so we do hope that you can join us. Thank you again for your attendance today. Yes, thank you, Dustin and Catherine and Tina and Erica, everyone who was on the call today. Thank you so much for your attendance. And we do hope to see you soon in the near future, whether it be virtually online or one of our on-site mini events and meetings. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.